Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on the JayBee Milly channel. I am JayBee and this is probably the third and final part of our video reacting to us going viral with the haunted high-rise story, you know, the hashtag Save the Hex Girls movement. Now, there are a lot more articles that covered this, some YouTube videos, but I do think that this is a good place to end this kind of series. Again, it is coming out a little bit later than we intended and we'd like, but people do seem to really be enjoying this, so if you do want more, then please do comment down below. But I think after these, you know, we're kind of done with this type of scenario just because we can only reiterate things so often, and I think these are the only kind of ones that all have something different to say, at least that we found. That's not to disparage any other articles, but if you do see another article or a YouTube video that covers this, please be sure to link it in our socials, linked in the description down below, or just comment down below the title, and if we do think it's worth checking out, we'll definitely review it and react to it and all of that stuff. So, without further ado, let's get on to the first article. So the first is actually a bit of a different one. It's not an article per se, it's almost like a headliner type thing. So if you do browse on the internet, I mean, who doesn't browse on the internet, right? But you know when you go onto that first screen and you see the search bar and there's news articles surrounding it. So from my understanding, if you are a Yahoo browser user or something like that, you could have clicked up on this and you see like daily news, like, oh gosh, I'm going to try and think about news headlines on the spot now without getting cancelled or something, but like toilet prices surged by £5, or, you know, Obama wants to be president again, Carolyn Gare haunted high-rise, you know what I mean? Like, it would be on that kind of border underneath and it would flash up at random. I think there may be like a separate entertainment segment, so it would probably be next to some type of, I don't know, some DC trailer. But regardless, this is actually so crazy because we've never ever had anything like this before. I mean, I guess the Daily Mail contacting us for permission to use some of our video was the closest thing to this, but this is mainstream, so you wouldn't even need to be a Scooby fan, a fan of any type of animation to do this. Like, it could be a business person logging into their laptop in the morning and they see this. It could be someone applying for a job because they've been out of work for 10 years. Like, any type of person could see this article and see our images there, which is absolutely crazy. And one of my biggest regrets of this is not kind of knowing this sooner, because we did see this, oh gosh, I think about 2 days before it actually, you know, after it actually happens. So I would have loved to have caught it on the day and asked people around or looked myself like, let's try and get a screenshot of it on the Yahoo webline page. I think that would be absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm sure some tech genius has some type of time travel machine that they can go back into archive pages and stuff. So if you are that type of person, you can get us a screenshot of this news article on the Yahoo headlines page. I would actually be forever grateful. But I've kind of waffled on enough. Let's get into the kind of little coverage here. So, Scooby-Doo and the Haunted High-Rise. During a recent appearance on the Smash or Pass podcast, oh my gosh, that is... Gosh, I mean, they've definitely done their research, or at least they've watched Grey Delisle's opening announcement from it, but geez. You know, I think in hindsight, we probably should have made a different title for the interview series because, oh gosh, I don't really want it to be called the Smash or Pass podcast if it's getting this type of attention. Although, in my mind, and on I think even IMDb, it's just called the JayBee Milly interviews, which I don't mind at all. Like, that's probably a better name for it, to be honest. But via ComicBook, animator Carolyn Gare revealed the follow-up to Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, meant to reunite Mystery Inc. with the Hex Girls, has been cancelled for tax purposes. So then there's that kind of quote there about Carolyn Gare talking about the politics. And then this last tagline here is the Carolyn Gare interview, and then it links us directly to the video, which is absolutely crazy. I'm almost wondering if you actually could have watched the video on the browser. That would have been absolutely... that would have been nuts. But that's it. It's kind of along a load of other headlines. Like, just scrolling down, I can see stuff from John Wick Chapter 4, I think the new Scream movie, The Penguin, and some type of bear that I don't think will get me monetized. There's Deadpool 3 stuff here. So there's all different types of stuff there. I think it's a pretty good coverage, to be honest. And again, we've never had something like this before. Is it as meaty as some of the articles? No. But I did just want to highlight this one purely for the fact that this is unique to us in terms of search engine coverage, but also if someone is aware of how to kind of get that type of coverage, the screenshot, then I would be really appreciative. But without further ado, let's go on to the next article. So the next article is another unique one for us in terms of coverage, because this has actually been picked up by the Pride website, which is really interesting because I kind of feel like this is the type of coverage that just wasn't possible for something like Holiday Horns or even the Mystery Pups, in that it's good to kind of look at the Scooby side of things, but also in terms of pop culture and every single thing that's going on in the wider world. It is important to note that a lot of LGBTQ plus fans have kind of taken a warming to the Hex Girls, being many of their first experiences with that type of thing and just them becoming icons in general. And I have seen floating around somewhere like, why does it have to come down to this? But and for all I don't think they're Hex Girls, at least not in like the state of like the Witch's Ghost, were actually intended to be that way. I think to completely disparage the connection is doing a big disservice, considering the fact that the sole creator of the Hex Girls, Rick Kopp, is openly LGBTQ+. So I do think that there's a massive history with that community, with the Hex Girls characters themselves. Not to mention in the Daphne and Velma Morgan Baden books, there's actually kind of something going on there with the Hex Girls that I won't spoil, because I do recognise and recommend that people go read those books. So I do think that it's such a worthy inclusion for the Hex Girls to be picked up by this, and it actually is quite humbling, because I know that this series has been called We've Gone Viral, we've done this, but in actual fact, without the characters of the Hex Girls, it wouldn't get the coverage. That's just as simple as it gets. So more accurately, the Hex Girls have gone viral, and we're just the vessels that could happen in. So we're really humbled to be featured on all these types of coverages. So let's get into this article. This comes to us from Bernardo Sim. So 2023 hasn't been the best year for Scooby-Doo fans. A new animated film titled Scooby-Doo and the Haunted High-Rise has been in production at Warner Bros. With an expected release for later this year. The movie was going to feature the long-awaited return of the Hex Girls, an all-female goth band beloved by LGBTQ plus fans of the franchise. Earlier this year, Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav promised that the cancellation of future films and TV shows had been left in 2022, and fans shouldn't expect that practice to keep on happening moving forward. Alas, Haunted High-Rise storyboard artist Carolyn Gare confirmed during an interview with JayBee Milly that the upcoming animated feature was scrapped by the studio. So, I guess two things there. With all the other things, I kind of could have excused it, storyboard artist Carolyn Gare, because she is a storyboard artist, she was a storyboard artist, it's something she does. For instance, we're podcast hosts, we're YouTubers, whatever, it's kind of like, you can call us either, and I think that kind of works this way here. But it says, Haunted High-Rise storyboard artist, which she may well have been, I'm not actually too sure. It's very possible that given a profession, she did work on a few of the storyboards. But if you're going to specifically mention Haunted High-Rise, I do feel like, again, it could have done a lot more impact if it was, the director of Haunted High-Rise, considering that this article, does credit her for that Haunted High-Rise work. And again, this whole type of thing where, I don't know, I mean, again, like I say, this is why this is the last part. That whole storyboard artist thing has been said by us to death at this point, but it's just something that I do want to point out there. And also in terms of overall context, of course, this wasn't a contradiction from David Zaslav's promise that the tax write-offs were written off, because, of course, this was in October, not when it got viral, which I think was around Valentine's Day. I think so anyway. But let's continue. There's this whole thing about the quote about when Carolyn knew that it was shelved, about the cost of things, and then we've got a nice bit of history here. So I don't know, because we get a little thing about the Witch's Ghost, and for a Pride magazine or a Pride website, I would really like to have had some type of acknowledgement about the Hex Girls creators, ties with the LGBTQ plus community, because I do feel like it's so important. And in fact, if you do want to learn more about that, we did have the absolute pleasure of interviewing Rick Kopp about a year ago now, so I'm going to leave that in the description down below as well. But that is such a great pleasure to be, featured by the Pride website. Now, again, I do want to reiterate, and I did reiterate this online, a part of me would have preferred if it was, LGBTQ plus creators that broke the story from this point of view. But regardless, it's just nice to be not an ambassador as such, but to be able to spread the coverage there, because I do feel like when enough people get involved, our voice really is loud, and we're all on the same team in terms of we all love the Hex Girls, we all want them to be saved, so I really do appreciate that. But without further ado, let's go on to the third and final article. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking we've covered this before, I mean, it is true that we've covered a comic book article about this situation, but this is from another writer entirely, released more or less at the same time, so I think it was possible that multiple people over at Comic Book got a whiff of this story and it was a case of them both kind of publishing it at similar times. I'm not really sure. I mean, I doubt that someone's whole article would get scrapped if they weren't the first one to the story. But again, I do feel that this article does do enough to differentiate it from the other one. And in fact, I don't like ranking these. It's kind of more about the intrigue of the information. But the writer here, Megan Peters, is actually the next person that I would love to get a hold of, to interview about their experiences at Comic Book and the Haunted High-Rise coverage, because their whole entire thing with Comic Book is they co-host some of the Pokemon stuff, they're involved in all the anime side of things and animation, so definitely someone that I think is worth looking out for and speaking to about the situation, a bit like we did with the Loop article and May Harrington O'Neill, all that type of vibe. So if anyone does know how we can get a hold of Megan Peters, I know there's like a Twitter at the bottom of this article, then we will definitely appreciate that. So, and if you do want to see a Megan Peters article or a Megan Peters interview, please do let us know in the comment section down below, because as we mentioned in part 2 of this, for all we do what we want essentially, like the podcast is ours, we're going to steer it ultimately in a way that we see best. But first and foremost, we do want to make people that watch them happy. We want to cater to their needs and kind of seek out who people want us to speak out to. So yeah, if there is a demand for that, we will pursue that a bit harder. But for now, we're going to be dissecting this article a bit. So it looks like another project at Warner Bros. Discovery got axed without us noticing. While the world focused on the sequel to Scoob, the upcoming Batgirl flick, it seems animators were hit with another blow. After all, a surfaced interview with director Carolyn Gare is making the rounds, and it confirms Warner Bros. CEO David Zaslav requested Scooby-Doo and the Haunted High-Rise to become a tax write-off. The update comes from YouTube, courtesy of JayBee, so this is why it's kind of interesting. From JayBee, it misses out Milly, misses out Sophie entirely, but hey, I mean, this is why this is one of my favourites, because I'm in the limelight, so, I mean, obviously that's a joke, but kind of interesting there. As it was their guests spoke as much as they could about the project's cancellation. It turns out work on the film was well underway when Warner Bros. Discovery pulled the plug, and that includes some original songs by the Hex Girls. She confirmed the film was finished with recording and ready to go into animation when Zaslav decided to turn it into a tax write-off. What would make this the most heartbreaking is that this was going to be a new movie starring the Hex Girls, featuring the original 3 voices, per usual, and new songs. The songs had already fully finished when the film was down. Scoobytopia, so hey, a shout out to Scoobytopia, linked to their channel in the description as well, summarised on social media for fans. Now the news is making waves, and it has animation lovers upset once again with Warner Bros. Discovery. Ooh. So, this is the next part of the article. After all, the company drew dire last summer and fall when its plans to curtail animation were made public. A large number of animated series like Final Space were axed and given a limited time to stream on HBO Max before being removed. This was all done in the name of cost saving. The other animated projects were cancelled behind the scenes as tax write-offs. It turns out Scooby-Doo was hit twice by the decision, and we can only assume this Mystery Inc. gang isn't happy about it. However, some of the series has found success at Warner Bros. Discovery and HBO Max as of late. This year, the original animated comedy Velma was released, and it drew a record audience with its premiere. Despite mixed reviews across the board, a second season of Velma is in the works, but sadly Scooby-Doo and the Hex Girls have had their comeback shelved indefinitely. What do you make of Warner Bros. Discovery's slew of write-offs? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section below, or hit me up on Twitter. Ooh, so maybe we actually do that. And the only comment is, so instead we get left with the garbage Velma show. So definitely, I mean, again, I'll say this. Dumping on Velma isn't one of my hobbies. I wanted it to be good. I want adult Scooby-Doo content. But I think to call it mixed reviews is very kind. I think it was pretty one-sided for the most part. But again, I kind of feel like this article is different enough to me to really want to get out and reach out to Megan Peters. So maybe we do see that happen in the future. Again, this is going to be the final part for now. We're not ruling out the possibility of finding more articles to do or to even reacting to some YouTube videos that people have made about the scenario. But yeah, thank you so much for persevering with us through this 3-parter. So, it's been so well beloved, I can't even believe it. It almost makes me wish that I had done it sooner. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Make sure to hashtag save the hex girls on all social media. And please like, comment, and subscribe to JayBee Milly.